Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another Z-Series deck profile. We are not going over a new leader in today's deck profile, but this leader was definitely designed with Zenkai in mind, and you can tell from how the 17-18 teaming up unison operates that Gamma was totally designed with Zenkai in mind, and it does use the Z deck very, very well. So the reason I want to talk about Gamma today is because I've been testing it quite a bit for Z format, and we put a lot of work into this deck as a team for Ultimate Squad format. And the list looks very different nowadays. There are a lot of key changes that I felt like this is a good time to go into that and explain those changes. So we'll be doing that in today's video. If you guys are new here though, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you never miss a video. And before we get into it, guys, gotta shout out our team sponsors, DBS Deck Planet, the incredible resource I am using for this video, as well as Mystic TCG. If you guys need sealed products, go check them out down in the description. That is for One Piece and for Dragon Ball. So anyways, let's just jump right into things. So at this point, we all probably know what the Gamma leader does. The main reason why this leader is looking strong going into Z format is, again, because it abuses Z energy pretty well with the unison it plays, but also it gets 3 energy at the end of every turn, much like SS3 Reboot, and you're able to keep up Dirty Burst while still making proactive plays. You can tap out on offense, and that's typically not going to be a problem because, again, you get that 3 free energy back. So that seems like a really strong thing going into the new format. Getting into the main deck, though, we have the Baby Hatch SCR. I still think Baby Hatch is the way to go for this deck in particular. I only think that SSB Kaioken Goku, the new SCR coming out of set 18, I think it's only really worth playing in ramp decks, especially in Gamma. Like, most of your plays tap you out. On turn 4, turn 5, you're going to tap out for the Cell 9 drop. You don't really have excess energy to play Kaioken Goku, and even if you did, you're looking at like turn 6, which is probably a bit too late for this deck. Again, I really don't think it's good in ramp decks where you can untap like 8 or 10 energy. Probably not so much in a deck like this. Plus, I've found Baby Hatch to be really needed, especially going second against a lot of these red aggro decks. It's really a lifesaver in a lot of those scenarios. Next up, I want to talk about Android 18, Let the Battle Begin. So this card's still very good, but it's coming off last format where it was arguably kind of oppressive. Like, if Gamma went first and had 1 energy open for this, as like U7 or as Yellow Trunks, that could honestly snowball the game into Gamma's favor right there. But this card gets a little bit worse this format, and the only real reason I mention that is because of the SS4 Gogeta matchup. Most of the cards they play that you can hit off of this are going to be played off skills, so they can kind of outplay it where they, for example, use SS4 Gogeta Unison to +2, and you have to counter window 1 play Android 18 for it to be effective in that case. And if you do that, they can choose to play nothing. So you basically just played a 15k blocker for 1 without actually counterplaying and bottom decking anything, which is a lot less value than the card normally generates. So that's kind of rough. But I will say the card is still very good in the red Sin matchup, because unlike SS4 Gogeta, it's maybe a little bit more fair where their low to the ground threats don't actually have deflect. So this card does pick up some value there. But yeah, card's still really good, maybe just a little bit less good than last format. But against the decks of last format, it should still operate the same. So solid card. 4 copies of Android 14, our deck's Floodgate. And again, this card has answers, but it's still nice that this deck has a built-in Floodgate. And when your opponent doesn't have the answer, this can end their turn outright. Next up, we have 2 copies of Android 18, Rebellious Will. I think the Android 17 is just better because as barrier, it sticks to the board more. But sometimes you get in there for that critical, and you do need a decent number of these cards that kind of like help fix your energy. So I found 6 to be pretty good. Then we have, of course, 4 copies of the Cell 9 drop, your main boss monster. What is cool, though, in the Z deck, we have the new Cell Z battle card. We'll get to that in a little bit, but kind of like that and this are your board wipes, and you can alternate between the ones that make more sense for the scenario that you're in. Like, if your opponent only has small battle cards, you can play the 3-drop Cell, save this for the next turn where maybe they play their boss monster, you can clear it then. Or if they aren't going to negate, for example, if they don't have energy open or they're not at 5 life to use the blocker negates, you don't need to go into this cell quite yet. You can go in for those critical strikes on the Z battle card. Just some different scenarios where you might want to pick and choose which cell you go into. Then, of course, the 4 copies of Limitless Energy, 2 copies of God Sealing. This is a card that was not main decked last time around, but I've really liked it in the main because you can't use it defensively, but it is a free offensive answer to Floodgates. So if you're going wide on the board with androids, for example, you do want a free answer to Floodgates, and I do find it pretty effective for that. And in the Red Sid matchup, if you're on turn 2, you've played your Unison, you've awakened, you haven't used your Untap 3 ability yet, so you're not locked into androids. So for that one turn, this card is usable defensively, and it is really good against like their Dread Destroyer or their Nova or their Ice. This card can pick up some value in that matchup in those scenarios. Then 4 copies of Android 17 Rebellious Will. Again, I think it's a little bit better than Android 18 because it's barrier, it sticks around a bit more. Then 4 copies of the Unison, absolute no-brainer. 4 copies of Android 14 and 15, the Ravager. This makes even more sense now because you pitch it to Church of the Unison, and then the Unison combos it from the drop, and then that goes to Z Energy. So again, like, you can just tell this deck was designed with Zenkai in mind for sure. 2 copies of Chilled Army Reinforcements. This right here just brings me to say that last format playing Gamma, it was sometimes a bit tricky when you get stuck at 6 life and you wanted to get a little bit lower in life to get some more resources to your hand so you could apply more pressure to the opponent. Now with SSB Vegeta surmounting the impossible in the Z deck, you can go to 5 literally whenever you want as long as you see your Unison on 2, and then you can play Chilled Army Reinforcement, get to 4. That is a really, really nice thing. 3 copies of Dirty Burst. We're bumping this up a little bit because it does seem a bit more important in the upcoming formats. If you don't have it against SS4 Gogeta, you are in big trouble. So I don't want to say play 4. I think 3 is still fine because you don't really want to open with this card, but you do want to see 1 to 2 copies per game. And this is actually a really good answer to Broly Crown, believe it or not, and in the SS4 Gogeta matchup, because like I said, Android 18 is a little bit ineffective in that scenario because they're playing Broly Crown off of a skill and they could choose to just not play it if you counterplay. But if you do Dirty Burst, you're still locking them out of attacking with 7 or higher, and you've just tapped the majority of your energy. So once you do that, Broly Crown no longer recognizes that you have 2 energy open, so its effect fizzles out. So basically, trading Broly Crowns for Dirty Bursts is a really good exchange in that matchup. Then we have 2 copies of Boo Unison. So another thing about the red matchups, I've been playing a lot of red with this deck, if you haven't noticed already, but this card is very important in the red matchups, and of course that makes going second a little bit tougher because 1, they're aggro, they love the advantage, but 2, you know, getting this thing on turn 4 going second is a lot harder than getting it on turn 4 going first. But when I do stick this against red decks, I do usually feel like I'm turning the tide of the game back into my favor, so I kind of want to bump it to 3, but at the same time, I'm at 52 cards, and I do like the consistency that that brings, but I may end up bumping this to 3 if I really feel like I need a 3rd copy. Then we are making a big super combo change here. Android 8, Kind-Hearted Machine. Back in the day, during Ultimate Squad format, we were dead set on playing the blue-green super combo that came out in the set. It would untap a blue-green energy. Honestly, that effect wasn't all that great, but it was a searchable blue-green super combo, and we did play just a little bit of a rival in the deck, but now against these red decks, I do think you need to draw 1 super combo, but what I really like about this change is that it actually helps make Gamma a little bit more proactive because, like I said, getting down to 5 life is much easier with SSB Vegeta surmounting the impossible in the Z deck, and then you use a copy of a blocker token, and just like that, your draw 1 super combos are able to defend or apply pressure, whatever you need. So I have actually very much liked this change. Then we have 3 copies of Android 18 Measureless Strengths. This is a new card coming out in Dawn of the Z Legends. The Arrival, honestly, hasn't come up all that much. There are some very niche cases, but you have to spend 4 energy because in this deck, at least the way I have it built, you have to combo a blue-greens, then be able to Arrival this. Again, doesn't come up all that often, but you can catch some opponents during battle because this is one of the few cards that is somewhat playable that actually kills things right during battle, so that's really good. But mostly you're using it for the energy exhaust and the activate main. The activate main is actually really good because it makes your entire deck searchable, and it makes this card searchable, which was not actually searchable in the previous iterations of the build, because most of the stuff only searches Red Ribbon armies. She is just a pure android and a heroine. So yeah, having searchability for that when you need it, as well as your super combos, as well as your blue greens, it's really nice. And then we are playing 2 copies of Gamma 1 Power Unleashed. This is coming out in the tournament pack for Dawn of the Z Legends. This card's okay. I mean, don't go ahead and break the bank on this for the deck if you want to play it going into Z Series. It's a nice card, but honestly, you can just play 2 copies of the Android 13 1-drop searcher. Like, this offers more utility in my opinion. Like, the Android 13 can search your Unison, which is definitely not a bad thing. But this has the upside of being able to be played from energy and being able to go up to a huge attacking stat if it kind of survives or gets played around that time of the game. It is good, but I really don't think you need it to play this deck. Like, I've been playing a lot on turn 1 when I see it, and if it dies, cool. If it doesn't die, that's also cool. So yeah, Android 13 would fill a similar role there. And then another big change is Android 19 Energy Absorber. I don't know if a competitive Gamma list has ever played this card, but nowadays I feel like I need it. I was playing against Red Sin, and man, they can sneak up on you with those turn 3 triple strike crits on their big 8-drop. and that was just no bueno. So I needed to have a 1-drop negate. I was thinking about playing Dimension Magic, but I don't think we need the extra abundance of energy because our leader gives that to us already. I think this being an android, this being playable out of the energy, I think those were good enough reasons to consider this card, and I have honestly liked it. So having 3 copies of a 1-drop negate and having 4 copies of a floodgate feels really solid. We're still not playing Bean in the deck. It is kind of nice on a lot of your dual attackers, but there's just no space for it in honesty. And when you're playing a deck that's so negate heavy, it often feels like you don't need Bean. At least that's my opinion anyway. But going down to the Z deck, we have 3 copies of Cell, Awakening of the Created. I was talking a little bit about it before, but I have played all 3 copies of this in the game before. Like, it definitely can happen. This card is actually really good against Sin, really good against SS4 Gogeta, because you just swoop up all their small guys and then swing at them for huge critical numbers. I typically don't get to resolve the triple strike because they're not playing that many battle cards by the time I play this, unfortunately. And even if they do have that many battle cards, some of them are usually Z battle cards, which don't actually go under this guy. They just get removed from the board because of the game mechanic. But it's still really good to go for those 2 ginormous criticals. 25k is actually a really, really big number for 3 energy, so I'm a big fan. 2 copies of SSB Vegito, Godly Spirit. I do find myself going into this on a lot of turn 5s. It's just that attrition type of card that, you know, every turn it lives, your opponent's losing a card out of their hands. So in those grindier matchups, this card is actually a pretty big MVP. And then 2 copies of SSB Vegeta, Surmounting the Impossible. Can't talk about it enough. You probably don't need to play 2 copies of it. Like I mentioned before, play 1, go down to 5 life, and then use a blocker negate to get yourself down to 4. That works perfectly fine. But I don't know if you need the 4th cell. I don't know if you definitely don't need the 3rd Vegito. I definitely don't see a world where you need a 3rd Vegito. It would only probably be the 4th cell. My wouldn't be so great in the Z deck because we're playing so few future Trunkses. So yeah, I mean, if you want to play the 4th cell, go ahead. If you want to play the 2nd SSB Vegeta, go ahead. But yeah, those are all my changes, guys. I've really liked this build of Gamma quite a bit. I think it actually adapts very nicely into the upcoming format. Again, like Gamma 1, don't go break the bank over it. It's not super needed in any way. If you even wanted to, you could chop this and like go up to the 3rd Boo Unison. But I do like having a turn 1 play because kind of just charging turn 1 and passing feels a little rough. But on the flip side, going 2nd against the red decks, I'll charge turn 1, leave it open, and usually negate with this guy. So that works out pretty well. But anyways, guys, I want on the comments below, how are you playing Gamma this upcoming format? Have you made drastic changes from last format? Have you not? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.